how much responsibility do you and the SNP government take for some of that disenfranchisement that people feel given some of the failings in the NHS, public services? And if I could also just ask, would you describe the 167,000 odd people that voted for reform at the election last year as being part of the far right?
No, I wouldn't. I think those individuals feel disaffected, and they are making that choice, and it's a choice that I think I want to dissuade people from making that choice. In relation to the responsibility, for us, I'm First Minister of Scotland. I've been, a political leader for a long time. I had a wee bit of a break in the process. I would point out that we were elected in 2021 with the largest share of the vote, if my memory serves me right, of any political party in the history of devolution. So there has been a lot of engagement around about our party, but these are issues that will be sorted out at the election in May of next year. Andrew Lermouth, the Herald. Andrew.
Thanks, First Minister. Anas, has John Swinney not just played you like a fiddle here? Because you've given Reform an almighty boost, and the only party on the table whose lunch is being eaten by Nigel Farage is yours.
No, I don't accept that because, one, I think all the organisations that came today came in good faith, and I think it would talk down those individuals to suggest that they were not politically savvy enough. That's the first thing. Secondly, I'm really clear about government failure having to be addressed if we are going to take on the disenfranchisement and the division. And third, and this will be arguments I'm sure will play out over the course of the next year going up to the election next year, the reality is at the other end of that election it's either going to be John as First Minister or me, and I've got to make my case, John will make his case over the course of the next year, and we both have, I imagine, interest to want to persuade people that we can deliver a different future for our country that doesn't require divisive politics or the policies of Nigel Farage or Reform.
You talked this morning about tackling anti-democratic forces. Now, Reform were outside this building this morning labelling you and others democracy deniers. So do you class Reform as being anti-democratic?
Well, what I'm about, and what the purpose of today has been about recognising the threats and the challenges to our democratic system. And what I've tried to do today in good faith is to bring together a very broad cross-section of Scottish opinion to reach out to our communities, to engage our communities, and to make sure that as we look at the global threats and pressures that exist towards our democratic system, that we are able to address that effectively, and that will be the focus of the discussions that we take forward. Lindsay Buse.
Thank you, First Minister. Some have characterised today's summit as a bit of a talking shop. What do you think has practically and tangibly been achieved by today's event?
I think what's been achieved, and by the way, I don't intend to answer all the questions, folks, so I'll happily involve anybody else who wants to make a contribution. I think what's been achieved today is that we have brought people together to engage in the start of a conversation about how we act emphatically to protect our democratic system. Because what I don't want to find myself in is I don't want to find myself in some years to come regretting that I have not taken a stand on the threats that we face, whether that's about the threats of disinformation in our debate, whether that's the threats to participation in our politics because people find the climate and the culture off-putting, or whether it's about the fact that we don't fundamentally stand up against sentiments and initiatives and actions that are fundamentally at odds with how I think Scottish society wants to proceed, so that we actually tackle the fundamental issues of inequality, of intolerance, of prejudice, of disrespect in our society. So I'm not for a moment going to say that today is the end of the process. Today is the start of the process, and it opens up that opportunities for us to take that forward.
Reform UK views this as an establishment stitch-up by politicians scared of their rise in the poll. Are you scared that this becomes basically an inadvertent advert for reform in the voters who already feel disconnected from some of the mainstream parties here?
I think what this is about drawing Scottish society together to recognise the dangers that we face to our democratic system, and to making sure that we do everything we can to re-engage people in our democratic processes and to cherish our democratic processes so they can work for people. So that's what the purpose of it's been about. It's not been just a grouping of politicians. We've leaders of very significant civic organisations at the table just now. We had over 50 organisations represented around the table today of a variety of deeply connected civic, faith and societal organisations. And it's about bringing people together in common, to find common ground, which is, I think, an important objective at a time when our society faces so many of the threats that it faces just now. So,
thank you, First Minister. One of the issues that the far right spread misinformation about is immigration and asylum. But Glasgow City Council has warned that some of the pressures on that city are risking damaging social cohesion. Are you concerned that that sort of language and narrative could kind of play into the hands of the far right? And the council's also asked the UK government to pause Glasgow being a dispersal city for asylum seekers. Are you concerned that Glasgow may no longer taking asylum seekers?
I think what this issue relates to is the fact that the City of Glasgow is wrestling with a significant volume of asylum applications without the resources from the Home Office to support them deal with that challenge. So it's not an unwillingness. The city has been an incredibly accommodating place over many, many years. The issue is that there isn't a commensurate support to the housing infrastructure that is coming for that area of activity. Now, obviously, we have an obligation to invest in affordable housing stock in Scotland. You'll be familiar, we've increased the budget for that in this financial year. But there's I think, a reasonable point and request that is made by Glasgow City Council to the Home Office to support them in dealing with the implications of a policy issue which is entirely reserved.